Hey guys, so in this video, we're going to watch a little bit more of Dr. Stephen Myers. I did a live stream. I think that was the last live stream that I did, where we started looking at it, but then the conversation and topic kind of took another route. So we didn't get really through what I wanted to look at. So as you've heard me mention before in my previous scattered evolution videos based on evolution, I'm highly skeptical. I developed this skepticism 10, 15 years ago, a long time ago, just watching these debates. I was expecting the theory of evolution to completely, overwhelm with evidence any of these ideas of creation, or even intelligent design. I initially said, well, like God decided to put evolution into get the ball rolling with evolution, and more and more complex life forms developed through this theory, through this evolution, and then finally we're here with us, and this was God's plan all along. And in a way, this is still intelligent design. It's just that He's doing it through the mechanism of evolution. I had no skin in the game. I wasn't even Christian back then. Only been Christian maybe like a couple of 4 years maybe by now. So I had no skin in the game. It's like I didn't need to justify I didn't need to debunk evolution because it wasn't even part of my spiritual worldview, anything about intelligent design or anything against evolution. So why am I extremely skeptical? Because open-mindedly, with no skin in the game, I started watching these debates, and I was shocked by the side that defends evolution. I think that they come out with a strong mask, a strong appearance, a confidence appearance. They make big claims, and then when those are challenged a little bit, or we get to really what they're talking about, or ask the appropriate questions, a lot of that just melts. And since I acknowledge that I might be wrong, since I acknowledge that I'm learning, so I don't think just plain old Joe Blow, stupid Jason coming here and debunking, evolutions. Like, did you even take like any of these courses? No, I'm just a stupid idiot. So why don't we watch people who are smart? And this is what I want to do, this journey with you guys, my regular viewers. I'm sure evolution, that's going to pop up, and people will probably not even look at this video and see and just make their claim like vegans do. They never look at the video. So there's going to be a lot of people, but I don't care about those people. I care about my regular viewers. I want you guys to watch these videos that made me very skeptical, and I want to see if the arguments are good, and if you become skeptical watching the same thing, or am I just a complete idiot? I mean, I might be right and still be an idiot, whatever. um, so let's get started. Enough wasting time. I just want to get through this, and this way I'm going to be able to share my opinion, right? But I will also um, be able to say, look, I'm not saying this guy's saying it. I might be an idiot, but this guy, and Stephen Meyer, we'll go through that one. I'm going to show you like all sorts of different people talking, different debates, and we'll go on this journey together, and we'll find the truth. So somebody had said, do you really think that there's a conspiracy? Do you really think that there's a conspiracy where 99% of the scientists are deceiving themselves? No, I don't think that at all. I think that they are possessed by an ideology, I think that evolution to atheists is extremely important. Before the theory of evolution by Darwin, it was intelligent design. It's like when evolutionary theory arrived, what it was in 1850 about? I mean, it hasn't been around for a millennia. Atheists were like finally like, oh, good, now we have an intellectual reason of how to completely push God out of the picture. And like I said, I don't care how smart you are, saying nothing created everything. All right. Meaning that there's no ultimate purpose or meaning in life. Like Carl Sagan says, we're all stardust. Evolution is a blind process of natural selection, survival of the fittest. For some reason, these random mutations created improved body systems. I don't buy into it. And ultimately, if there is no creator, and if we're just all just biological machines with no purpose, the only meaning that I can find in life then is to find my own meaning. And so I mean, without that outlook, morality, what is morality? They'll say it's subjective, it's not objective, it's all like, relative and stuff like that. So there's no objective morality. People are saying, atheists, that it's people in society. And I mean, so you get some crazy comments, and stuff like that. Let's start watching.
He says that biology is the study of complicated things that give the appearance of having been designed for a purpose. What's the key word in that quotation? Appearance, right? It's the illusion of design. It's the illusion of design.
It's like, okay, guys, I understand that it completely looks like a complex, beautifully, intelligently designed system, but we all know that it's just an appearance. Okay, it just appears to be designed for a purpose. Just that's an illusion. Okay.
Now, sneak preview, and this is a bit of a preview on tomorrow. It turns out there's a big question that biologists are asking today. And they're asking, well, is adaptation and the small scale variation that's involved in producing adaptation the only evidence of design, or might there be other evidences of design? Another way to think of that.
So again, adaptation is in a way epigenetics. So we have this DNA, right? The genome. We have some genes that are not at the moment being expressed. In a way, they're dormant genes, but sometimes outside environmental impacts can activate or deactivate. For example, one guy sounded very smart, probably went to university because he was throwing out some big words, and he even said that, look, we're even losing our wisdom teeth because of evolution. And whoops, that is completely BS. We don't fit wisdom teeth, and that's because of nutritional deficiencies. That was proven by Weston A. Price. I was told too that these wisdom teeth that don't have room in my mouth is evolution. I remember being told that. That's a nutritional deficiency. So already this smart guy that looked quite, convincing, he was talking about wisdom teeth. He also mentioned that I kept on saying that there's no macro evolution, that a new kind of category is created. He's like, oh, using kind is not is unscientific. We don't use that. Those are those Christian creation that use kind. It's not so whatever. Call it a body system. He was saying when I criticized that fruit flies, they developed a fruit fly with a small variation, and he goes, indeed, that is macroevolution. A fruit fly with a slight alteration is creating a new body system. I'm like, no, a fruit fly created what? A variation in the other fruit fly. So you have a fruit fly with a variation. And then he's like, smart guy's like, that's macroevolution. Like that is developing a complete new body system. No, bugs remain bugs and fish stay fish. And there is adaptation, there's variation. And, this whole teeth crowding and losing our wisdom teeth, that is not that is not a gain of information. That is a plan, a blueprint where these teeth are supposed to fit. And because of nutritional deficiencies, we are not growing to full capacity. And that is why our teeth, our wisdom teeth need to be pulled. If you would eat, if you would avoid all these grains, high sugar content, processed food, and you stayed on animal food, and you would be able to give birth to a healthy baby with no nutritional deficiency, and you continue this animal-based nutrition, and that kid, I guarantee you, will have no nasal congestion, chronic nasal congestion, and will have a broader nasal passage. Bridge of the nose will be broader, and the jawline will be much broader too.
That is, does the evolutionary process only produce small-scale variations, or can it also explain the large-scale innovations in biological form that occur as documented in the fossil record? Does a nice job of explaining the finch beaks, but can explain the origin of birds, can explain the little changes, but how about the big changes? And there's a very big discussion and debate going on right now in biology and evolutionary biology about that question, about how much creative power does the natural selection process actually possess. That's a little bit of a sneak preview because we'll get into that scientific issue tomorrow. But from the standpoint of understanding the philosophical implications, the worldview implications of Darwinism, it's important to understand that when we talk about Darwinian evolution, we're not just talking about change over time or about even common ancestry. We're talking about an unguided, undirected process that can produce the appearance of design, but not without itself being guided or directed in any way.
So if you just listen to that, it appears that it is wonderfully designed, but that's just an illusion. And they make these claims based on a process that has occurred over billions of years that has never been seen or witnessed, with zero evidence in the fossil record of any transitional fossils. So what you have is in the fossil records, all of a sudden a group appears, and then another body system appears, a complex body system, birds, reptiles, fish, primates, canines, felines, the cat family, the dog family. And you see wide adaptation and wide variations and wide speciation. Adaptation, speciation, microevolution, they're all the same words for saying that there is a body system which this the evolutionists, I guess, don't like us saying a kind or a category or a family of animals. They're like, oh, that's unscientific. Whatever categories, vertebrae, invertebrate, like I don't know, mammals, reptiles, like there are categories, and within those categories you have a wide variation. But within that body system that we categorize, let's say all birds always create birds. There could be adaptation, microevolution, variation, speciation. This can be all actually um, created through, yes, outside, external, environmental impacts that do create adaptation, speciation, microevolution, but not macro. Not one jump from bird, and from bird a completely new body system. This idea that, like, oh well, humans, like our digestive tract, like here's this appendix, that's just a vestigial organ, really, has lost any purpose. And then somebody will say, like, well, it doesn't mean that vestigial organs don't have purpose, it's just that they don't have the same purpose as before. No, okay, the appendix has a purpose in humans. We also have hindgut fermenters, foregut fermenters, ruminant animal digestive systems, carnivore digestive system, monogastric. We got omnivores. We got a wide variety of different digestive tract floor plans. Okay, blueprints for all sorts of different. We all live now at the same time. Humans, ruminant animals, pigs, gorillas, all of these different complex digestive systems, these blueprints that have a wide variety. I don't think that it's like, oh look, humans, we lost that. No, I think they're just completely different body systems. And humans, there's a purpose why they only have a small appendix. Our teeth are supposed to fit in our mouth.
So if we have our three meanings of evolution back here, evolution number 3 is the one that's affirmed by sort of the mainstream Darwinian establishment. And as Stephen Jay Gould said, that has...
So you see, there's change over time, sure. Here, the universal common descent, one tree of life. So you see this guy right here? This is probably some kind of bacteria or very, very primitive cell, some kind of primordial soup that rain and lightning on the rocks created some kind of sentient being that became alive from inorganic matter, kind of, I don't know, kind of stuff. So it's like we all came, our great 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 grandfather was Campbell's primordial soup or something like that. Completely ludicrous, because the fossils do not show this idea of this first form of life, and from all of that soup came every single possible life form. Then you have natural selection as the cause of new forms and appearance of design.
As materialistic or even atheistic implications. Let's talk a little bit about the philosophical implications of evolutionary theory, because the talk tonight is intelligent design, what it is and why it matters to our worldview and culture. How many people are familiar with the term worldview? Is that okay, excellent. I'm going to tell a story, but I'll probably tell it again in church because it's fun. Okay, so if you come to church on Sunday, you'll probably hear the same story again. But when I was in college, when I was heading off to college, I had a conversation with my father. And he's a mechanical engineer, works in aerospace. He's practical. He can fix things. He doesn't daydream. In other words, he's completely unlike me. And at least I thought so when I was younger. So when he'd be fixing the car, he'd have me, he wanted to teach me, so I'd be standing by, and he'd ask me to hand him a wrench, and I hand it to him, and invariably I'd drop it in the most inaccessible place in the engine, and he'd just get so I was not mechanical, and I knew I didn't want to be an engineer. And so he said, look, son, I know you're heading off to college. I know thing in my family. And so we're sitting over dinner, and he pulls it out, and he starts reading the grades. And And then he has kind of a long nose, and the glasses.
Yeah, I'm gonna skip this part. There's just a story.
Down the nose, and the eyeballs went to me, and it gave me this look that meant in our family, it's now time for offspring to give account of offspring's behavior. And so I got real defensive, and I said, Dad, look, I know these philosophy classes don't mean anything to you, but they're important too, because in philosophy, you learn all about worldviews. And a worldview is just basically like a personal philosophy that everyone has, even if they don't know about it, and it's kind of their default way of thinking about the big questions. And everybody has a worldview, and if you don't understand other people's worldviews, you don't understand why they use the words they choose and where they're coming from. And he cuts me off, and he says, son, you don't need a worldview. You need a job. Now, that seemed really cruel at the time, but now I'm that guy with my kids. So, I kind of get it. But anyway, I kind of had a trick for a while. And then that philosophy has a name, and Stephen Jay Gould kind of was hinting at it. The scholars call it materialism. So they also sometimes call it naturalism, the idea that nature is all there is and there's nothing beyond nature, as in this picture here, where we have the physical world represented by the mountains and the trees and the pendulum representing the laws of nature. And then materialism, there is no God. There's nothing beyond the material or natural world. And so just going back to the previous slide, and one way to think about materialism as a worldview is to think about the story it tells about reality. If you think of in the Gospel of John, it says, in the beginning was the Word. Or in Genesis, it says, in the beginning. There's an affirmation that the physical world is a created thing that came into existence a finite time ago. But materialism instead says, no, just as you Christians and Jews think that that God is eternal and self-existent and has always been here, the great I am that I am, we think that the physical universe has always been here.
So it seems to me that I thought that was a claim, like, well, we think that the universe is eternal, but then you have the Big Bang, and they have that science saying that the universe is still expanding and maybe even at a faster rate, and they can look at the light and the red shift, and they can tell the distant, like they have calculations and stuff like that. So I'm not sure if materialism can still say that, no, there's no eternal God, there's just an eternal universe, because it seems like time, space, and matter came into existence. And don't they mention that everything came from nothing? So not sure how everything came from nothing, because no, you'd say everything comes from the universe, and whatever's in the universe perhaps is eternal. I'm not sure. It's not making sense.
It's eternal and self-existent, and therefore it didn't need a creator. So the materialistic story goes something like this. From eternity past were the particles and the energy. And the particles and the energy arranged themselves to become more complex chemicals, and those chemicals arranged themselves to become the first living cells. And those cells then evolved by Darwinian processes to produce all the forms of life we see today. And one of those forms of life, namely human beings, conceived of the idea of God. Okay, do you see how this is a worldview now? This is because the most important question that
it's like, how did these particles, these elements on the periodic table, how did those particles all of a sudden become living stuff? And then how did that living stuff become aware and self-conscious? And then that living stuff, okay, well, made up this fairy tale over here after. Interesting story.
Every worldview has to answer is, what is the thing or the process of the entity from which everything else came? In Christian theism or Judeo-Christian theism, what's the answer to that question? What is the thing from which everything else came? God. In materialism, what's the thing from which everything else came?
Nothing.
It's matter. It's the particles, the energy. Okay.
Yeah, but where did matter come? Where did the particles and the energy come? Because you always use that analogy, like, oh yeah, we can look at this big textbook and say that this is intelligent design, it's organized, it has information, you can tell that there's an intelligence that made it. But we have to go one step further and say, how was the material actually made? How is the ink made? How is the ink used to write the lettering? It's a lot more stuff that you have to explain too, not just about a book that's written. It's like God didn't just write DNA. He had to create the proteins. He had to create everything, the substance, the particles.
See, you've got two diametrically opposed worldviews. And in the materialistic worldview, there is room for the idea of God, but not God as a reality. That's Freud. You remember him? He said, God did not create man. Man invented the idea of God. Okay, so you have these competing worldviews in our culture, but one of them is dominating the university culture, the media, the law schools, the courts, the elite knowledge culture.
Yes, these institutions can become possessed by an ideology. So anybody who's followed this channel is quite aware that, well, like, why would the scientists lie and say that saturated fat and animal food and cholesterol is bad? Why would they say that? What is there some conspiracy where 99% of the nutritional scientists are trying to do a huge deception? Why would they do that? Well, unfortunately, there is an ideology that they are possessed by, and they've been following 70 years the same narrative that these things are bad and that these things are good. And there's plenty of science showing that that is not accurate, except what is the public told? Even though the science is out, no, shouldn't say dietary cholesterol has any ill effect, you still hear about it. Saturated fat studies came out saying, no, there's actually not even an association with mortality. Doesn't matter. We'll continue saying that. Red meat causing rectal cancer, that's an observational study. And that was actually with processed red meat. Yet everybody saw the mainstream, social media and everything talking about meat could cause colorectal cancer. All these things get redacted, but then after they're never put on social media. Oh, we were wrong. No, let's just put the propaganda out there. Good. We made it simple. We repeated the lie over and over. People are starting to repeat it. Oops, we were wrong. Okay, we'll publish in some article say it was wrong or redacted but nobody else will hear about it. So then we can continue.
Pastor told me there's a lot of people here with science background or advanced degrees, lawyers, doctors. I think I could have a show of hands, but I bet you recognize this from your experience in higher education. There's a default way of thinking, and it's not necessarily friendly to theistic belief.
We went through, global health issue, for the past few years. And, the scientists, they made a lot of claims. A lot of people, just stupid layman people. I'm not sure. It doesn't really make sense. My instinct's saying something's up, and And then, you're a conspiracy theory, misinformation. Okay, we're going to cancel you, deplatform you. We're going to ostracize you. We're going to blacklist you. You're going to lose your job. You're going to be shamed. Oh, oops. Oh, now, actually, it could have been lovely. Actually, what this was supposed to do wasn't really doing what it was supposed to be doing. But the science said so. What, are you a conspiracy theorist? You think that they were actively lying, and why would they do that? I don't know. Climate emergency. Climate action now. Ever since the last 40 years that I exist, the Earth is about to die in about 10 years, and it just keeps on getting pushed back.
God.
So yeah, I don't think that universities are pushing like critical race theory, that the universities are pretty much a joke. They are possessed by a woke leftist ideology among other ideologies. And yeah, they are biased, and they are possessed by an ideology, and yeah, they are lying. Big shocker.
Okay, so we have this dominant worldview. It's coming out of science, or at least it's coming from the perceived message of science. And that helps us to explain a little bit why we have young people losing faith, especially when they go off to university. Does that make sense? I have here, I like this slide, the three great prophets of scientific materialism. You have Darwin and Marx in the late 19th century. Darwin tells us where we came from. Marx has a materialistic view of the future, his dialectical materialism. It's a utopian view of the future. It's strictly materialistic in the sense that he thinks that material economic forces are driving everything. And then Freud comes along in the early 20th century, and he tells us what to do about our guilt, what to do about the human condition. Can you see how those three great advocates of scientific materialism would end up advancing a kind of comprehensive worldview? Those three figures answer the basic questions that Christianity and Judaism always answered: creation, where we came from, where we're going, eschatology, and what to do about our guilt. Creation, fall, redemption. It's all there, but in a materialistic form. Okay, that's where we are in the elite culture. This materialistic view has lots of implications.
So yeah, when you look at the tenets of materialism, it's just basically, I guess, the definition of atheism. So from these three, materialism was adopted. It was adopted by academics in the university, and this is what's being pushed, and it's an atheistic agenda based on the tenets of materialism. Some university professors are so religious about their atheism and hatred for Christianity that in their classes, if they find out that there's a Christian, they will harass them, try and break their faith, and try and convince them to leave their faith, making them like, oh, why don't you read this book, the God Delusion, and just and they really go after believers, just like they brainwash people in university about other narratives, and that these universities, there's one a private Catholic university where the headline is Catholic student in Catholic school suspended for being Catholic, because he had talked about gender issues and saying, well, I'm Christian, I believe the Bible is the word of God. So the guy said he believed in two genders. This was in a Catholic school. And he was either suspended or expelled or shamed or whatever. And he got suspended, I think, and he went to school anyways to go to class, and he got arrested. This is a Catholic in a Catholic school getting arrested for being Catholic. Gotta love that. That's hilarious in a completely disgusting way.
It tells us that God does not exist, obviously, that man arose gradually from lower animals by mindless, undirected processes, that human beings have no intrinsic value. We're not made in the image of God. We don't have special value because God has deemed us unique among his creation. Free will is an illusion because we're governed by strictly materialistic force.
Free will is an illusion. What did Yuval Noah Harari, our favorite World Economic Forum transhumanism historian, that said that the future commodities will be brains, bodies, and minds, and that humans, and this is the great insight of modern science for this generation, is that human beings are algorithms. We are fleshy algorithms. That's it. There's no free will. We're just a bunch of molecules giving the impression that we have free will, but really we're not. We're just fleshy, squishy algorithms. And of course, that means that there's no objective morality, that that's just an illusion, and everything becomes relative. And this is a concentration also. Human beings have no intrinsic value, so there's the priority ends up being the majority. The important is the majority over the individual, because the individual has no intrinsic value, right? There's no God that exists. We just, we're just arising from lower animals. It's a mindless, it's undirected process, meaning there's no purpose or meaning to it. Morality doesn't exist. So free will is an illusion. Morality is an illusion. Uh, it's an illusion that everything appears to be intelligently designed, but it's not. And of course, life has no ultimate purpose, because when we die, we rot. So if there's no God and human beings don't really have any intrinsic value, then why can't I kill other human beings just like other predator animals kill prey animals? Why can't I just fulfill my desires? If there's a hot girl, why can't I just like philosophically, why can't I just rape her? I mean, God doesn't exist. We came from lower animals. Humans don't really have intrinsic value. I mean, free will is an illusion. It's not my fault. It's just the way my brain's programmed. Like there's no free will. So I'm a victim. I'm acting out this rape against this, intrinsically valueless other fleshy algorithm. So what's the problem? I mean, there's no ultimate purpose in life, right? When we die, we rot. So why don't I have as much hedonistic joy as possible? Because in the end, this is all we got. Dangerous.
External environment or neurophysiology, nature, nurture. Objective morality is also an illusion, because there is no source for any objective standard that's implied in all moral propositions. Life has no ultimate purpose, because there's no purposive creator behind the universe. And when we die, we rot. There can be no hope of an afterlife, because the only thing that exists is matter. And when our matter decomposes, we're done. That's the worldview.
Inspiring.
Any of those propositions resonate?
Do you wonder why these tenets now that are in a way the new atheistic or materialistic religion, just like veganism is, a cult, well, materialism and, such things as these, they're also a worldview. And I don't think that telling our youth that, well, there's really no God that exists, and we're just, we came from monkeys, and basically, we're stardust and just, animals. So we don't really have intrinsic value. And anyways, like all of, since there's no morality, really, there's no free will. So we're just acting out this fleshy algorithm, giving us the idea that we actually have free will, but that's just an illusion. And life really doesn't have an ultimate purpose. I mean, I think you should find meaning, find your own meaning, but let's admit it that it's just materialism. When we rot, when we die, we rot. This worldview, there's a proverb that says, as a man thinks, so he is. Meaning, whatever worldview you are given, it will have an influence on your actual being, on how you act and react in the world. Everything comes from a worldview. We all have a worldview, whether it's religious, atheistic, anything else under the sun.
With any people any leading thought figures, Richard Dawkins, Stephen Hawking, figures. So this is a way of thinking. Now,
there you go. This is where I had seen it.
There's a famous proverb in the Bible. It says, as a man thinketh, so is he, or in some translations, so shall he act. And so this way of thinking is starting to percolate into the culture, and it helps us understand.
You tell people that there's no God, that there's no purpose, that there's no meaning, that we're just stardust and animals and we came from monkeys. If you make people think that we're just animals, they will start acting out their animalistic behaviors. You're telling them that there's no value, that there's no value, that they're just robots, with the illusion of free will. Uh, that that like it's just a horrible worldview that leads to um, like nihilism, leads to despair, leads to not a good outlook, in my opinion.
Why these scientists?
Because right now, see, the injustice that I'm experiencing in my life, and the unfair things, and just all of the injustice and stuff like that. I understand that God created us, that there was a fall, and that God is working out our salvation and promises a return to Eden. That's what I think. And therefore, there is no injustice, nothing. I could have everything taken away from me, and I would still have my faith. I would still have God. That would make me, in a way, untouchable, and my faith cannot be tampered with, right on to death. But if you are a child that was abused or something when they were young, um, injustices, and then you snap and you have this idea: there's no God, there's no value in me or other people, just this life. We came from evolution, where it's survival of the fittest. Take them down if you can. What do you think's going to happen? You bring these children, these youth, into despair, and they grow up with this worldview, of a hopeless worldview. And what happens if there's no God to dish out justice, and you are seriously being screwed over? That will make you quite dangerous eventually. Eventually, you're like, you know what? This is unfair. There's no meaning to life, anyways. No one's going to bring any of this to justice. I want vengeance.
Scientific issues that are important for forming worldview are so important to broader personal and cultural concerns. So let's just give a couple examples. We have this epidemic of suicide among young people. And we had a kind of poignant experience of this. We had a bereaved father call our office a few years ago.
I'm going to skip this. Anyways, he's just saying that this was the son of a military chaplain, Christian family, military service. He was a good student, but when he went to university, his teachers were really hounding him about his Christianity. They made him read books like The God Delusion from Stephen Dawkins. And anyways, this kid, they found his memoirs, and they could see how he was somebody of faith, starting to question his faith, starting to write stuff, and he killed himself. Then there is also this gentleman here that was part of the Columbine case. Same thing, killed 12 students, wounded 23, and then killed himself. And he had a lot of writings about evolution, and started, some scary stuff about, well, it's survival of the fittest, and it kind of like justified this worldview, justified him taking charge and doing that.
Manifesto or other, whether in social media or someplace else. And so the media always says, why are they doing these things? Well, many of these young people tell you. They're depressed, they're angry, they don't think that God exists. And in this case, in the Columbine case, the two young men, it's tragic, thought that they were helping natural selection get rid of the weak. And so this is a quote from Eric Harris. Natural selection, it's the best thing that ever happened to the earth. Getting rid of
That's the same thing as the eugenics program that was sterilizing low IQ people, anybody with any chronic disease, Down syndrome, any mental retardation, whatever you want to call it. I don't know if that's socially accepted to say mental retardation. Mentally handicapped people. Okay. All of this was eugenics. It was the idea that it was taking natural selection and saying if natural selection gets us to to where we are, we're going to use intelligent selection, and what we'll do is take control of the evolution of humanity by making sure that people that are not smart, have mental issues, any defects, any diseases, that they are sterilized and unable to procreate. And that way we will breed out all of these problems. That was eugenics, which Bill Gates' father was not a founder, but heavily into it. Now it's being repackaged and no longer being called eugenics, but to a certain extent, it's still present. And I think it will spring its disgusting head somewhere close enough in the future.
of all the stupid and weak organisms. It's all natural, yes. I mean, how tragic. He didn't know what he was, this is what he's 16 or 17. Do you think he ever really studied whether or not natural selection is the whole show and the whole explanation for life? Probably not. But somewhere he picked this up and acted it out. I could give lots of examples. I mean, the whole debate about the sanctity of life in this country. If you think of a human fetus as nothing but a lump of tissue, well, it's going to seem morally innocuous to you to abort such. Abortion seems morally justified. We even have people justifying now infanticide. A different view, if you have a theistic worldview and you see humans made in the image of God, you might see an intrinsic dignity in that young person developing in utero. Diametrically opposed worldviews lead to diametrically opposed actions. As a man thinketh, so shall he act. So is he in his heart. So what's all this got to do with the topic of the evening, intelligent design? I've been talking so far about why Darwinism matters, because Darwinism has given rise to a broadly materialistic worldview. And that materialistic worldview, and here, this is a diagram we use to kind of illustrate this. Darwin, Marx, Freud, the three great 19th century, early 20th century thinkers justify a worldview called materialism. If you adopt that worldview, that personal philosophy.
You see what I mean? So totalitarian politics, right? Dictatorships and stuff like that. We have no value, and therefore, if there are a group of influential people that are in a situation where they have power over everyone, then that's survival of the fittest. They raise to the top, and therefore they are the fittest, and then because they're the fittest, then they can put their totalitarian agenda on everybody. Then, of course, eugenics, right? There's no intrinsic value in any one individual, and therefore it's all about what is best for all of humanity. And if eugenics reduces sterilizing these people, and to a certain extent some people were probably killed. The whole Nazi Germany, the attempt to completely wipe off the face of the earth the Jews, that's eugenics. That was a cleansing process that Hitler believed he was doing, and he actually believed that it was moral. It was doing a net good in the end. It was the means. What is it? The means justify. My God, that's stupid. Anyways, it means that you can justify anything to get that result, as long as you can morally say moral relativism, that, well, it's moral because yes, it killed all these people, but it saved a lot more. So these people had to die for the greater good. This does not happen with a worldview that is Christian.
It's going to have an impact on your thinking about morality, about the sanctity of life, about whether or not you have free will. That is that the proposition of Darwinism is now being challenged by cutting edge findings in biology. Remember, we said the key proposition of Darwinian evolution.
See, I'm assuming that he's not lying here. You know, that the debate is still on, which I find encouraging, right?
And so forth. But what if Darwin's theory of origins isn't true? Might that have any different implications? Well, if you're a theist and you found this part of the talk a little depressing, I have some good news. And that is that the central proposition of Darwinism is now being challenged by cutting edge findings in biology.
So I guess there's cutting edge findings in biology that are challenging the tenets of evolution.
Remember, we said that the key proposition of Darwinian evolution is the idea that life is the product of an unguided, undirected process, such that there's no evidence of actual design in nature, only the illusion or the appearance of design. So I just want to give you a little taste of some of the things that have been discovered that are suggesting.
Now look at this, guys. Okay, if I pulled up an F1 racing car, right? You know, Formula One racer, and show that engine. Wow, wow. It's like, yeah, that's not a rock. That's not a log, a wood log. That's something that humans created. Intelligent humans created an intelligent design. Of course, it's a motor. Except what Darwin did not know when he saw a bunch of finches with different beaks and assumed that finches, because they have different sized beaks, do not only produce varieties of finches or birds, they produce sometimes cows or hippos, probably. Darwin, and for the longest time, the telescopes, if they would have looked under a telescope at a cell, it would have looked like a little blob of something. They weren't strong enough. But now we have stronger microscopes, and we can see that there are complex machinery. Here drive shafts. You have gears. These are machines. Okay, and what they're going to say is we went from pond scum to cells, but what they don't realize is even the simplest cell has these complex machinery. Now what developed first? Was it the shaft, or was it just a gear that was kind of like spinning or not spinning, and just all of a sudden this thing went into it, and no. Okay, this works because all parts were made at the same time, and it is a essential part of the survival and function of the cell. So if this didn't come up at the same time, that cell would not function.
Not just the illusion of design or the appearance of design, but evidence of actual design. Some of you may be familiar with this. This is an animation still of a little tiny machine that's been discovered in the membrane of a bacterial cell. It's called a bacterial flagellar motor. You can see, if you look at the screen, you'll see that there's a rotor and a stator and some bushings and a drive shaft and a U-joint, and that there's a little thing coming out the U-joint. And if you could see more, you'd see that it's a whip-like tail that functions like a propeller. What this is one of a number of miniature nanoscale machines that have been discovered inside one-celled organisms or inside other cells in our bodies. And it turns out that this isn't the only such miniature machine. There are many of them. This is literally a rotary engine. It turns in some species at 100,000 RPM in one direction, can
100,000.
change direction on a quarter of a turn. It's hardwired into something called a signal transduction circuit that gets information from the surrounding aqueous environment in which the bacterium lives. And the bacterium will get that information and then change its direction. So this thing is spinning like this, and it'll move the bacterium here, there, and everywhere to chase down its food supply. I'd like to call this high tech and low life. Okay, it's awesome. Nobody in Darwin's time, no one had any idea about the existence of such machines. But if you go on on our websites at Discovery, I have a website, darwinsdoubt.com. It's got a whole playlist of animations of these miniature machines. They're little turbines called ATP synthase that build
the whole point to say is that, you got Dr. Stephen Meyer. I have another video that we're going to go through is John Lennox, a Oxford mathematician, very highly respected people that are in academia. And I have no authority. I can't appeal to my own authority. So people can, if it's just me guys sitting down, learning this stuff and then trying to regurgitate it to you, it's not, there's no way of knowing if I'm full of crap or not. But what I hope to do is to watch with you. Like I said at the start of this video, watch with you gives me a reason to stop, to say a few comments and stuff. But what I want to go on a journey with you guys, and I want you guys to see and hear the things that I saw and heard open-mindedly when I was looking at the debates and lectures and stuff like that, and see if you are surprised by some of the facts that perhaps you assumed you knew, or facts that you assumed must be solid, well researched evidence. If you follow me on this journey, which will span many videos, watching and responding and reviewing together, sometimes on live streams, sometimes like this on videos. And this is for my regular viewers. If you want to come here and all of a sudden, we're into our 5th or 6th video and then comment and not look at any of the other video, could care less about that. I'm more focused on the community that we're building and the regular viewers and the small family that we're creating of friends. I care about what you guys think. I really want to know if you're presented with the same information, the same content. Will you still hold firm to evolution, or will it put some doubt? Or, I'm curious. This is what I want. But I do not think I'll be convincing by me trying to present this. I don't think anyone's going to believe me. I think that people won't know if I'm full of crap or not. And to be honest, I'm still learning. So I rather we go on this journey by watching these and then slowly commenting. I think this could be exciting.
The ATP molecules that store the energy that drive all of our metabolic processes. There's sliding clamps that are all involved in DNA replication. There's little robotic walking motor proteins that pull vesicles of material along. Essentially, they're called tubulin proteins, but they're essentially railroad tracks. Mm-hmm. And there's a whole system of transportation.
I'll probably show an animated video that I did maybe a few months ago on intelligent design, where it's animated.
Of materials from one place in the cell to other places where they're needed to build yet other things. The cell is a complex factory with nanomachinery. It's mind-bogglingly complex. Now,
I mean, if you think nanotechnology, that again, intelligent humans are intelligently designing these nanomachines, yet a blind process created these nano machines that are highly advanced, that can compete with most of our engines.
Of course, if you're a true blue Darwinian, you'll say, well, yeah, that's the appearance of design. But there's a problem with that argument. Because remember that natural selection was the mechanism that could produce, that has the creative power. Well, Michael Behe and others who have worked on these types of machines say that Darwinian explanation doesn't work, because in this case of the bacterial flagellum, it has this set of 30 protein parts. And they've done what are called gene knockout experiments, where you knock out one of the genes, stop it from functioning, so it doesn't produce the part. The parts are all made of proteins. So the 29-part version of the machine doesn't work. The 28-part version doesn't work. The 27-part version doesn't work. Only the 30-part version works. Now, why is that a problem for Darwinian evolution? Well, it's a problem because natural selection, quote unquote, selects for functional advantage. If there's a trait that an organism has that allows it to win a competition for survival, that
any computer programmer knows that if you go behind the program into the code and you change one, like a 1 or a 0 in those binary codes, that's it. The program's crashing. So what they're saying is that this here came from evolution, like, but if you remove one aspect of this, the whole thing collapses. Therefore, the whole thing had to come into existence already in one shot.
Trait will be passed on to the next generation. But if the trait has no function, then there's nothing there to be selected or preserved and passed on. So in the case of the flagellar motor, if you have the 29-part version or the 15-part version, whatever, until you get to 30 parts, you don't have a function that can be preserved and passed on. So natural selection can't help you until you have the whole motor. But that means you...
So like, isn't that a good rational logic point? Because it's based on facts. Like, we've done the experiment. There's 30 parts. It functions. Anytime you remove even one part, nothing functions. Therefore, if one aspect out of 30 is gone, then nothing works. Then how could that thing that doesn't work be advantageous for natural selection to continue the process? And this is seen throughout all of creation, that some things could technically have progressed, but there are some things, especially symbiotic, multifaceted systems, whether biological or ecological or cosmic, whatever you want. There are some systems where the whole thing has to be produced at the same time, or else it doesn't work.
You can't build it up gradually in a Darwinian fashion, one part at a time, which means natural selection is not going to help you with this. So Michael Behe's argued, well, natural selection is a kind of designer substitute. Remember our illustration from before of nature doing the selecting, not the breeder. But if natural selection, which is the designer substitute, can't really design machines like this, then maybe these machines aren't just giving evidence of the appearance of design. Maybe they're giving evidence of actual design, intelligent design. It's a pretty good argument. There's been counter arguments, and we can address those in the Q&A if you know about them. They're good responses as well. But this is the kind of thing that's being discovered in biology, is little tiny miniature machines.
Way more leaps of blind faith to support this theory of evolution. Way more faith than religion. Way more faith to believe that all of this is done by natural selection, blind processes that came about when nothing created everything, and we've never observed any actual macro evolution, different body systems, body plans being formed. We see slight variations, adaptations, speciations, micro evolution, but a bug makes a bug, and a dog, makes a dog, and a monkey makes a monkey, and that's it.
But there's an even deeper consideration that I think leads to the conclusion of intelligent design in biology.
Listen.
This little, it's called a hook protein, is essentially a universal joint. And it's just one of those parts from the motor. Now we're going to kind of amplify it.
Yes.
And you see that it's got subunits that are labeled with letters. And those represent the amino acids. You may know that proteins are made of smaller subunits called amino acids. So the motor's made of proteins. The proteins are made of amino acids. There are 20 different kinds of protein-forming amino acids. And to get the chain of amino acids to fold into a specific shape that will do a job in a molecular motor or in the cell, the amino acids have to be arranged just right. And that raises a question. Well, how do they know to get arranged just right? To be sequenced properly so they fold out?
So this is one of the most important, okay? There is code. There is information. Information, okay, and written blueprints within the DNA of these molecules being built and everything else, okay? Just give me a second. Yeah. Information comes from an informer. Life comes from life. Okay. The idea of origin of species, right? And the theory of evolution, origin of species. The evolution, Darwin never explained biogenesis, how the origin of life has occurred. Okay. How did all of these gases and elements and things like this, proteins, how did they become conscious of themselves? How did this matter become sentient, become self-aware, become conscious? We don't know that. It doesn't answer that.
Up into the right kind of a shape. Well, it turns out there's another molecule in the cell that contains instructions for building those proteins. And
instructions come from an instructor. Information comes from an informant. Life comes from life. If we acknowledge that time, space, and matter came to existence, let's say at the Big Bang, right? So we had time, space, and matter. This nothing that created everything, well, this nothing, when it created everything, meaning time, space, and matter, including whatever this nothing is, cannot be inside time because it's what created time. So it's outside of time, right? Space, okay, it created space in the Big Bang. So whatever that nothing was is outside of space, and it created matter. So it is something that is non-material because it created material. If you look at that, whatever that nothing that they want to say created, well, that nothing has to be outside of time, outside of the material universe, and outside of time. So basically, what is that? And this thing that is outside of time, that is immaterial, that existed before space, okay, that create this singularity, this cause, right? It has to be anyways, whatever. To me, it has to be an intelligent designer because we have information, a blueprint. Okay, how did random mutation and processes develop a DNA sequence that is 604 billion letters, and that you move one or two of those letters possibly and the whole thing crumbles? How can we say that a blind process, that nothing created everything, and that if you add an extremely crazy long amount of time, somehow information, digital information, blueprints, information starts to create a complex, perfectly designed process. It's ludicrous, guys. It takes more faith to believe in evolution than God.
That molecule, of course, is the famous molecule of deoxyribonucleic acid, DNA. Now, the structure of DNA was elucidated by Watson and Crick in 1953. Famous story, wonderful story of scientific discovery. There were hints in their original scientific paper that they understood that DNA, because of its structure, might have the capacity to store instructions in something like a digital or alphabetic or typographic form. But an even more, I think, exciting discovery came in 1958 when Watson and Crick, well, actually it was Francis Crick, working on his own, formulated something called the sequence hypothesis. Can you see from the screen that this is what's called a structural formula of DNA? It's on the sides. There are these pentagons and sugars. You see that? That forms what's known as the sugar phosphate backbone of the DNA. And on each side of the molecule, you have that. The sugar phosphate backbone has no information in it. It's just the medium in which the information is stored. But along the interior of that DNA, do you see that those subunits are labeled with letters? A, T, G, and C. Now, if you look, if you were able to look small enough, you wouldn't see the letters. But the point is, and this was Crick's idea, that those different subunits structure, each one of those slightly different subunits is functioning like a letter in an alphabetic text. And this was his idea, what's known as the sequence hypothesis.
You understand, guys? So let me look for a book, right? If all life, ceased to exist and I'm some alien and I stop and I pick up this book and I'm like, all right. Looks like there's some organized writing here, picture. It has pages, same color. There seems to be these numbers on the bottom, organized lettering, paragraphs. If we could decipher this language, we could find out that there has to be somebody there. This is a story. There has to be a storyteller. If I walk in, this is Michelle's brother, actually. I don't know if you can see it, right? He painted this. So if I look at that, I can go, yeah, that's a painting. Chances are time wouldn't create that. That's probably somebody who is a painter. Paintings come from painters, guys, by the way. They always come. Like, it always comes from a painter, unless it's like now AI that does the painting. But who created AI? A human created this intelligent processing thing that can probably paint better than us now, but that doesn't matter. We still created that.
The arrangement of the DNA, that last slide was a little off, sorry. The arrangement of those subunits in the DNA are functioning like alphabetic characters in a written language.
Except that book is 6. Anyways, he's gonna say it's a couple billion. I thought it was, isn't it 3.6 billion? And it's doubled, so it's like 6 to 8 billion. I already forgot. He's gonna go through it.
The zeros and ones in this section of software, which is to say it's not their physical properties that gives them importance or a function in the cell, it's their arrangement in accord with a code. a code that we later discovered called the genetic code. So you have a genetic
A code is always created by a coder.
text and a genetic code, and that information, Crick suggested, is what is building those miniature machines in cells.
So if you're looking, see that's the problem, is that everyone is being convinced that evolution has an overwhelming amount of support and evidence, and it does not.
And the proteins out of which they're made. Now, that sequence hypothesis was eventually confirmed by about 1965, and it's one of the great episodes in the history of science. Let me give you an example. I'm from Seattle. We have some famous companies up there, Microsoft, Boeing. They're both information companies, as it turns out. At Boeing, they use a technology called CAD/CAM, Computer Assisted Design and Engineering. Any engineers here that would be familiar with that? Probably so, okay? Now, if there's so imagine you're at Boeing, you want to build an airplane wing, for example. The engineer's sitting at a console, he writes some code, sends the code down the wire. The code is translated into a machine language that can be read at a manufacturing apparatus, and then that information will direct the manufacturing apparatus to place the rivets on the airplane wing in exactly the right places in accord with the engineer's specifications. So we have digital information directing the construction of a mechanical system. That's what's happening inside cells. Digital code in DNA is directing the construction of proteins and protein machines. That's a fascinating, mind-blowing discovery.
Do you understand? Inside of you, you have these complex machines. We literally have these in cities and industries within each cell, right? Even the simplest of cells. Imagine more complex cells, but even in the simplest cell of a bacteria, you have these complex machines, and these complex machines are being built with blueprints, digital coded blueprints and instruction manuals telling this living cell how, why, and what to build and how to build each component, and it's an instruction manual. How the hell can we easily accept that? Yeah, of course, here's the blueprint for building an electric car. Well, here's actually, a blueprint that is 1,000-fold even more complex, and that's to build machines in cells. Oh, yeah, well, that's just the appearance of intelligent design. Sorry, okay, stupid Jason, uneducated Jason, still trying to be convinced about evolution, because this is way more logical to me so far.
For 2000, nobody knew this until.
And by the way, when we start getting into debates, and you start seeing people that actually understand what evolution is saying and hinting to, and the assertions that they're making, and these people are able to challenge these assumptions because they know the whole story, you'll see that those smart academics, they like really start getting heated and nervous. I had a guy in the comments saying, well, actually, the change, the mutation, and that variation in the fruit fly is macro, meaning, and I'm like, yeah, but that fruit fly is still a fruit fly. Yes, but that is macro evolution. Okay, because you said so, because it makes absolutely no sense. Macroevolution is a completely new body design, meaning fish produces a bird, or a bird produces a reptile, or something like that. We do not see that in the fossil record, and we do not see that happening presently. Therefore, these are theories, and I mean that literally, not, well, Science is constantly learning, so technically everything's a theory. Yeah, okay.
Till the 1960s.
Theory of relativity has been proven more and more. That theory has been proven. Evolution, no. Just the same lies are being pushed by so-called smart people that appeal to their PhD at the end.
Now, that raises a huge question, though. We now know that DNA
He
contains.
has a PhD, by the way, at the end of his name. So why is he an idiot, but the other PhDs pushing the university narrative? Why are they so smart?
Information. We know what that information does, but it raises an unanswered question, at least in the field of evolutionary biology. Anyone? Play Ben Stein here. Anyone? Anyone? Where did the information come from?
The information came from nothing. That nothingness not only produced that information, but produced everything. Nothing created that information. Even though usually information comes from an informer, but in this case, nothing created the information. The information created itself through a blind, random process. I don't know, even 15 billion years wouldn't set this up.
And the answer to that in evolutionary biology today is nobody knows. Especially if we're talking about the information necessary to build the first life. You know, if you want to give your computer a new function, what do you have to give it?
Upgrade. Information.
Code, right? Code, information. Same thing turns out to be true in life. If you want to build a cell from simpler chemicals, you've got to provide information to arrange the chemicals to make the parts of the cell.
If you want it doesn't matter. That makes sense. Anything that is created here by humans, there needs to be information. Like anything, like my sandals, okay, are made in a factory, and there needed to be a blueprint. There needed to be information. The people are reading the steps, and the machines are create whatever. But even this needs information. The people working in the factory, they need to understand, like, well, what do you want us to do? Oh, here's the blueprint. Here's information. Here is the instruction manual. Everywhere in our visible experience here on Earth is always intelligent. Design comes from intelligence. Information comes from an informer. We do not see this information and code and instruction manuals being produced by nothing.
Build a new form of life from a simpler pre-existing form, you got to have information to build the new organs and tissues. Biology is run every bit as much as in our computer world, it's run by information. What do we know about the origin of information in our computer domain? Bill Gates has said that DNA is like a computer program, but far more advanced than any software we've ever created. Where does software come from? A programmer. In fact, whenever we see information, especially if we find it in a digital or alphabetic form, and we trace that information back to its source, whether we're talking about a hieroglyphic inscription or a paragraph in a book or digital information transmitted through a radio signal, if we trace that information back to its source, we get to a writer or a scribe or a broadcaster. We always come to a mind or a programmer. So the discovery of information in a digital form at the foundation of life suggests that there was an intelligent agent involved in the origin of that life.
Like, guys, like, I'm honestly, is this guy a complete moron? Am I an idiot? Am I just like a simple-minded fool that's like, yeah, that sounds right. I like that. That's what I believe in. Or is it like, yeah, he's making some good points. I'd like to know what the the evolutionists would say. And we'll get to that because this guy has done debates. He would bring up all of these points, and it'll be super interesting because it's not just him doing his monologue sounding convincing. He'll be challenged and he'll challenge the other one. And I guarantee you, it's like I said, I've watched at least 70 debates on this topic, intelligent design, evolution. Okay. I'm telling you, you're going to be surprised when we watch those debates. You're going to be shocked at the performance of these idiots here, and you'll be shocked at the lack of substance from the evolutionists, the academics.
Life.
Even though I call them academics, but he's an academic too. And there's, I can show you a list of thousands of scientists in the scientific community that signed a petition saying that they do not support the theory of evolution as it is understood currently in the universities. I can show that another time.
Let me put it just slightly differently. In our uniform and repeated experience, which is the basis of all scientific reasoning, information always comes from a mind. So if we apply what we know about cause and effect from our uniform and repeated experience, we should conclude that the information we find in living systems, like all other forms of digital or typographic information, has come from a mind.
That makes a lot more sense, and I think that it is also, look, that makes a lot more sense, and evolution doesn't make much sense. But we say, well, like, trust us, because we've done like calculations and anyways. This just makes sense. This is a strong argument, and I can't wait till we watch the debates to see what these people say.
This is a very strong argument, not for apparent design, but for actual design. Early scientist who was applying information theory and informational concepts to analyzing molecular biology said, the creation of new information is habitually associated with conscious activity. Hieroglyphic inscription, paragraph in a book. And this is the argument that I made in my first book called Signature in the Cell, that the information that we're discovering in life is providing powerful evidence for actual intelligent design. And so this brings us to...
Okay, look, this stuff here, Darwin had no idea. He didn't know that even one single bacterium cell has insanely complex rotary engines and rail, like, machines, industrial machines, nano-sized, complex, highly performing, designed motors. He did not know that. He had an epiphany looking at birds on an island with somewhat different shapes and lengths of beaks. And from that, he said, instead of saying, well, there can be variation variation within a species, he was like, wow, I mean, maybe these changes that we're seeing in the beaks, maybe eventually, if there's 15 billion years, maybe that would start changing the wings and turn it into a hippo. Maybe we don't see that. It doesn't really make any logical sense as well. But maybe it's science.
What we call the formal theory of intelligent design, which is, in a sense, contrasting with evolution meaning number 3. Remember that? Just a few minutes ago, we talked about evolution as an unguided, undirected process that produces the appearance, but not the reality of design. The theory of intelligent design is not challenging.
It's just an illusion. Ooh, ooh, ah, illusion. Sorry, I had to get jiggy with it for a second.
Evolution number 1, change over time, or even evolution number 2, common ancestry, but it is challenging the idea that the only kind of design we see in nature is apparent or illusory, not real. The digital code is not something that's been explained by any undirected, unguided process, and therefore, what we know from our uniform and repeated experience should provide us with it provides us with a very strong grounds for affirming actual design. So the theory of intelligent design simply says this, that there are key features of living systems and also the universe that can be best explained by the activity of a designing intelligence, not an undirected natural process, such as natural selection acting on random mutations. In other words, living systems are look designed because they actually are designed. We got the miniature machines, we've got the circuitry, we've got the digital code, we've got the nanotechnology.
This has to be refuted, because if this is acknowledged as true, then God exists. Maybe we can't prove that it's the Christian triune God, but that there is something outside of creation that created all this, and that is a mind with intelligence and information. And if there is information, if there is code, if there is instruction manuals, then these things were created for a purpose, giving creation a purpose, just like Christianity says that there's purpose and meaning, and we are wonderfully created, and that all of creation shows the handiwork of the amazing God that has created us all. This here screams out designer. Now, people want to continue, to not live according to God, and they're free to do that. But this is why people reject all of this. The obvious, overwhelming, simple logic that, wow, somebody must have created this. No, I don't want to acknowledge that, because if somebody created this, then maybe maybe that thing that created, maybe it has rules. Maybe it had, since it created us, maybe, it has certain standards. Who knows?
That provides the evidence for this conclusion. Now, if the design we had in biology was the only design we have, we might say, as some leading scientists have proposed, that maybe life was designed not by God, but by some other agent within the cosmos. In the interview I mentioned.
So you have Richard Dawkins, right? He sat down and said, well, it's quite possible that if evolution exists, that there are other living life forms within the cosmos that are further along the evolutionary path. And perhaps these people came and seeded life on Earth. And yeah, so he's like, it's quite possible. I'd be open to believing that aliens are creators, that they seeded us and fought. That's Richard Dawkins. So he doesn't realize that, okay, well, even if that is the case, then who created those aliens? It's like, it doesn't really matter. It explains the origins of life here on Earth, but it's still, it just proves that life comes from life. He knows that is true, that obviously life comes only from life. Only God can create life. But he's completely, fine just putting it back just one generation. It's like, well, there's life here on Earth, but that's probably because another life seeded it. It's like, oh, so you acknowledge that probably life created life here on Earth, because deep inside that there needs to be a creator. There needs to be some kind of life that has jump-started life here. He knows. He rather say that it's a gray alien that is in a way our creator, instead of acknowledging God.
And where Richard Dawkins was talking to Ben Stein in the film Expelled, Richard Dawkins actually floated the idea that, well, maybe life was designed by an intelligent agent on another planet and then was seeded here on Earth. Francis Crick was so struck with the difficulty of explaining the origin of the first cell from simple chemistry on Earth that he also proposed a space alien designer as a hypothesis. It had a name for a while. It was called the idea of panspermia. He was so ridiculed by some of his colleagues, he decided he would never propose another theory about the origin of life again. He said it was almost a miracle. But it's at least logically possible if life arises on Earth some long, long time after the beginning of the universe, that maybe there was a pre-existing intelligent agent within the cosmos that created life and then sent it to Earth. So if all we had was the biology, we might have to entertain that as a logical possibility. But it turns out there's other evidences that I think move us in a decidedly theistic direction. I'm just going to touch on this.
See, this is the thing. University, a place of higher learning, should be teaching all theories. They should say, well, there's the evolutionary hypothesis, and this is the evidence, and these are the proponents. This is why they believe this. And then there's other people that believe in intelligent design. And, then the teacher, can present that and then have discussions and leave with, these are the two theories. They can acknowledge that mainstream science perhaps now has adopted the fine, whatever. But what's the harm in saying, here's the two views. Here's why some people believe this, and here's why other people believe that. Higher learning, right? Like, what's wrong? Universities have to protect students from the theory of intelligent design.
Talk much more about this on Sunday in the when I'm the supply preacher. And that is that in physics, there's another evidence of design that physicists have been talking about since the 1960s, maybe even a bit earlier. It's called the so-called fine-tuning evidence. It's the idea that the basic parameters of physics, the strength of gravitational force, the strength of electromagnetic attraction, the masses of the elementary particles, the electrons and the protons and the quarks and so forth, the speed of light, these basic fundamental parameters of the universe are very finely tuned. They fall within narrow tolerances, such as if those forces were a bit stronger or weaker, if the elementary
just a little bit off with any of these, and nothing could come into existence, and nothing could be saying, everything would crumble into chaos.
Particles were a bit heavier or lighter,
nothing would be here.
If the speed of light were faster or slower, if the universe were expanding faster or slower, if any of these things were a hair's breadth difference, then life would not be possible in the universe. In fact, in many cases, we couldn't even get basic chemistry off the ground. And the physicists have been blown away by this, because the probability of getting some of these parameters, just one of these, there's a parameter, for example, called the cosmological constant. And the probability of getting that right, that's the force that causes the expansion of the universe outward from the Big Bang. And the probability of getting it right is 1 chance in 10 to the 90th power. To put that in perspective, it would be like floating around blindfolded in space and being asked to identify one marked elementary particle in our entire universe, but not just in our universe, but in 10 billion universes our size. So you pick at random, your chances of getting it right are 1 in 10 to the 90th if you're looking for 1 out of 10 billion universes. One particle, like a quark or an electron.
With chopsticks.
That's the odds of getting the cosmological constant fine-tuned right. If it's a little bit stronger, we get a heat death of the universe. A little bit weaker, we get a big crunch, a big black hole. In either case, no life. So the physicists have just been very impressed with this evidence. And there are many attempts to explain it, but one of the great physicists of the 20th century, who had been an ardent scientific materialist, an atheist, was a man named Fred Hoyle. And he discovered many of these fine-tuning parameters and changed his worldview. And he was later quoted as saying, a common sense interpretation of the fine-tuning data suggests that a super intellect has monkeyed with physics as well as chemistry and biology. In other words, fine-tuning suggests a cosmic fine-tuner, also known as God. And since the fine-tuning was set from the very beginning of the universe, the space alien designer hypothesis won't work. Clearly, no being within the cosmos could be responsible for the fine-tuning of the universe as a whole that makes its very existence later possible. That would be
it's like me, okay, creating this computer, creating a sim city, a simulation of, you know, of the globe, of everything. And these people, okay, these characters, whatever, they are within this computer, but I'm the programmer, and I'm like outside of it. I create it, I'm watching, I'm able to manipulate the program, I'm able to make things happen, add things. I'm in control of this computer. But there's creation, there's these sentient characters inside here. They will they will see that the programs seem organized, they seem created, but they're denying it. They're living inside the computer and they're saying that there's nothing outside of that computer. And they don't believe anything here. They only believe things that they can see and touch within the computer and the program that they're running in. It's the same thing. God, okay, though he is omnipresent, he is everywhere at the same time, right? But at the same time, his, just like, you know, the compute, like anyways, the point is that I'm outside of the computer. God is outside of time, and it's the same thing. He created, he sustains everything, but if you're looking for him, his presence directly inside the program, you're never going to find him. And if you're too close-minded that you don't think there's anything outside this box, same thing. You will be deceived.
Getting the cart before the horse, or the effect before the cause, okay? So we have other evidence of design, in addition to the evidence in biology, that suggests that we're talking about a theistic designer. What I would say is that the theory of intelligent design and the evidence that supports it challenges, it's important because it challenges the dominant materialistic worldview and narrative that's part of our knowledge culture. And it also provides support for a theistic worldview, for the worldview.
So what, you're saying that 99% of the scientists are lying to us? No, it's not 90%. There's a lot of scientists that are against it. There's probably even more that are against it but are shutting their mouth because they want to continue a career and they want to get funded for their research. Stay in line, follow the narrative, shut up.
Affirmed by the Bible that there is a transcendent creator who is also active in the creation. Now, on Sunday, I'll talk a bit more about another category of evidence, the evidence that we have from astronomy suggesting that the universe itself had a beginning, that there was in fact a creation event. And I'll show some animation that will I'll show a little now to whet your appetite, but what scientists have discovered is that the universe is expanding outward from a kind of beginning point, like a creation event. Like a cone. And so on the basis of these things, there are serious scientists and historians of science who are now saying that the idea that God created the universe is a more respectable hypothesis today than at any time in the last 100 years. And if you come Sunday, I'll explain why I think
it's important to check out, you know, the names like this, the guy, the quotes and stuff. You know, also just research, go deeper, find out these people. You know, are they pseudoscience scientists? You know, go down the rabbit hole. You know, cross-check stuff.
That's actually understating the case. That what I call the God hypothesis provides the best explanation for a whole range of evidence we have about biological and cosmological origins, about the origin of life and the origin and structure of the universe itself. And so why does that matter? Well, there's a famous theologian from about 100 years ago, J. Gresham Machen from Princeton Theological Seminary, who said that false ideas are one of the great obstacles to the gospel. We will succeed only in winning a straggler here and there if we permit the whole collective thought of the nation to be controlled by false ideas which, by the force of logic, prevent Christianity from being regarded as anything more than a harmless delusion. We saw that the materialistic thought form, worldview, philosophy has deleterious, adverse, bad consequences for our culture. What would happen if the culture started to be rebuilt based on what St. Paul has called the knowledge of God? What would that tree look like? If we had roots that affirmed evidence of the reality of a creator, would we perhaps get different fruit on the tree? Would our culture look differently if we recovered the knowledge of God? If we ceased to forget him, to reverse the Solzhenitsyn concern? Even people who believe in God, I think in our culture, forget God. I have to confess that I do every day. What if we remembered him more?
Mm-hmm.
The fear of the Lord is the beginning of
All
wisdom.
right,
Maybe
guys.
we'd have more wisdom in approaching these
Thanks a
various
lot for
challenges that are.
watching. Post in the comments what you think. And there will be more to come. All right. Thanks a lot, guys. God bless. Post in the comments what you think. And thanks for, coming along on this journey with me. All right. Hope to, next live stream, maybe we'll do this topic live. We can have some people jump on the panels and we'll go from there. All right. See you guys. God bless.